William Summerville is running for election to the U.S. House to represent California's 42nd Congressional District. He is a veteran of the United States Air Force, a proud father, and a faithful pastor. When in office, he promises to serve the people and is committed to economic and racial justice. We will interview him now on 6 Zeros. Hey everyone, welcome to 6 Zeros. I'm Jay, and today I have the one and only Reverend Summerville. How you doing today?
I'm doing my best. Peacock proud, honeymoon, happy to be in your presence, in the word of my role model, Freddie Haynes. Happy Resurrection Sunday, Easter. If you're Muslim, Ramadan, Jewish, belated Passover, you know, got to be politically accurate in these parts.
What we got for the agnostics?
All right. for the agnostics,
have a good day.
Well, one, I honor your questions.
Oh, okay. That's
Yeah.
So tell us about yourself and what's your motivations for running for U.S. House?
Well, it comes from many places. Just a little bit about myself. I'm a pastor, father, veteran, academic, husband. I serve as a hospice chaplain.
Awesome.
Which I'll start there. Okay, let me start there. That's really the mode of operandis that got us here. Allow me to be able to speak to you, Jay.
Nice.
The circumstance is my work as a hospice chaplain, which has served the Orange County area, LA County area, and Inland Empire area, allows for me to be present with people who have terminal illnesses anticipating death. And so my job as a spiritual care provider is to be present with persons.
So you prep them for their transition? Is that what it is?
Emotionally, spiritually, culturally, all the same. Okay. Now with that, so out of that experience, hospice is a Medicare government funded program, hence a Medicare benefit.
Yes.
Okay. Where people are coming to your house, including myself, and giving you medication, providing you updated care, giving you a bath, massages, all kinds of stuff, all kinds of robust support and services. Okay. All of that is government funded and paid for our tax dollars.
Yes.
Okay. Now, with me as a spiritual care provider, with your tax dollars paying me to provide persons who are approaching death through their terminal illness or just failure to thrive as one of the diagnoses of that. As I'm experiencing this for over the past 13 years, I'm seeing that if our government can pay for Medicare for all the dying, then we can have Medicare for all the living.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And so hence I am a supporter of Medicare for all, single payer health care system.
Are you saying that this experience, this helps, like you give empathy? Does it help you in understanding
100%.
and relating to people?
100%.
Okay.
100%. Now, so basically, to stick with your first question, you know, how do we get into this? So that was what was the thrust that got me into this.
Okay.
I was fortunate enough to be a 2-time elected delegate for the Democratic National Convention, both in 2016, 2020. Then I was also fortunate enough to be a top elected delegate for the 73rd Assembly District for the state of California within the California Democratic Party.
For the audience, can you explain exactly what that is?
Okay. So to be a DNC delegate, you are representing a congressional district to be sent in support of the presidential candidate that you support.
Okay.
So for me, it was Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
Okay. So I was fortunate enough to be elected as a top elected delegate for the congressional district to go to Philly in support of Bernie Sanders.
Nice.
And basically what your job as a delegate is to represent your constituent, to vote, to basically affirm that you support that particular presidential candidate. Now, you also have the job and onus and fight to switch people. Okay.
Yes.
Or people can switch you.
Yes.
I was only fortunate enough to switch 2 people, but unfortunately, those votes were not really counted and having a front row seat to the misappropriation of how they were operating out of that convention. Before that, Senator Sanders told all his supporters to run for office.
Yeah, it just basically what it did. It showed you the realities of what you're getting into. It showed you the challenges
100%.
ahead. And then to help you work on your persuasiveness. It's so many lessons you learn from that, correct?
Oh, God, yes. Beyond. Yeah, it's a whole situation.
Yeah, it's because you have the theory of it, but then when you see the reality of it, you know, you can write anything on paper and say this is how the system works.
Doc,
but
yeah,
they'll finesse that paperwork to get any result they want.
You ain't said nothing slick to a can of oil.
Exactly.
This whole circumstance, this whole situation, and me running, like I said, has been 6 years in the making. So obviously my work with hospice, but then also that experience, and then like I said, Senator Sanders telling his supporters to run for office. I'm running for Congress because I believe it's the federal level that is the last line of defense for protecting black folk.
Yes.
Okay. I feel like I can best stand on my convictions in this capacity.
Absolutely.
More than anything. And I don't have to hide or try and swindle my way around stuff. And you know how we got to love us on the down low. Like, yes. I ain't got to do that.
Now, let me ask you this. You said that the last line of defense for the black community is the federal government. Would you also agree that the last line of defense for the black community is the black community?
That's a really loaded question and a good question. I would say yes and no. Yes, in that I reflect on Kellen Winslow Jr. You familiar with him, the football player?
Yes.
Okay. His father, I make a short answer into a long answer. His father wanted him to go to a college to play football with a black coach.
Yes.
Because his father felt like right now, because he's doing so well in football, the world is in love with him. But there will come a time where the world will not be in love with you.
Yes.
And having a black coach can at least mitigate some of that if you're not successful in these spaces, which I anticipate for my son to be things of that nature. So yes to that question. No, in that due to post-traumatic slave syndrome, due to the policy that we are given, due to the fact that we're not made aware of what's going on in society. We do not.
So let me ask you this. So what if the federal government does not protect us? Then what happens?
Then, well, they're currently not protecting us now, and we're currently going through what we're going through right now. Okay. and it's going to get worse.
So is there anything that we can do internally to change that, to maybe be a line of defense for ourselves?
Get involved with politics.
Okay.
Policy is the way to go, to further advocate for us. And in light of this reparations movement, in light of this progressive movement, in light of the uncertainty that our society is currently experiencing, this is the most opportune time to get involved, which hence the reason why I'm running for Congress, hence the reason why I'm asking, send money to our campaign, get involved, volunteer. Let's really make this thing happen, especially in this race. It's an open seat in a primary jungle where we can take it. We really, all we have to get is 15 to 26% of the vote to win this, to get into the general election, to get past this primary. Okay. We have a very real shot here.
Okay, and that's a great point, because we see that a lot of the times. And if we just showed up, you know, we'd be able to get someone into office. So the question I have is, what are the core tenets of your platform, and how does that impact black Americans, descendants of American chattel slavery? Because the problem is, a lot of times we're lethargic or apathetic to politics because for so long it hasn't worked for us. Mm-hmm. So if we know that it can work for us, we will turn up. So what are the core tenets of your platform?
So my overall message, mantra, and motto is serve the people. That's one. My top 5 issues are climate justice, Medicare for all, comprehensive reparations, voter rights protections, and money out of politics. I highlight money out of politics because that's really the top 4 issues that I mentioned of these 5 will really never get done until we get money out of politics.
Absolutely. It's like in sports. Like if a team has a big war chest, they can get all the best players.
That's right.
So like if I'm a multinational corporation, I'm gonna fund all the candidates that are gonna, prioritize my agenda.
Exactly. And that's what I'm up against. But in the area that we are in, we have really great grassroots activism here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the motivation. That's what's really the momentum behind this campaign. We've been fortunate enough to raise an estimated $40,000 already, which, with us, we can do stuff with a shoestring budget.
Yes.
and we know our hookups. We exercise our social capital, even though we don't have the financial capital right now.
So let me ask you, your platform, you had the main core tenets. It was the environmental justice, racial, social, healthcare justice, and then you had you outlined promises that every particular groups, Latinx, African American, so on and so forth. With so many different groups that you're catering to, how can Black people feel sure that you're going to be able to have the time and the bandwidth to prioritize our issues when, a lot of these groups that you're saying that you're making promises to, they have competing interests,
Right. And that's what I challenge my progressive colleagues to say. If you're not trying to correct the historical injustices in our society, then don't call yourself progressive, 1. And 2, don't claim to be a friend of mine.
Absolutely.
And that's how I move and operate.
Another question on your platform is you made a great point when you talked about Asian Americans. You talked about the need for disaggregation, right? You talked about how they're independent communities. The needs of the Cambodian community is different than the needs of the Korean community.
That's right.
Totally different socio-economic stances or situations.
That's right.
But when it came to Blacks and African Americans, you said that you were for descendants of reparations for descendants of American chattel slavery.
That's right.
But then you said, however, I'm for a Black agenda that for non-African Americans. So when we
for non-African Americans,
yeah. So it said, however, I'm for a Black agenda that includes or descendants individuals that are not descendants of American chattel slavery to fight global white supremacy.
Correct.
So when I read that as a person of intelligent Black society, I read that and I'm like, that seems like aggregation of us.
Yeah. No.
Okay.
No.
So what do you say to that?
Yeah. No. That's not it at all.
Okay.
So for clarity, comprehensive reparations, a reparations plan specifically, and can only be argued by descendants of U.S. chattel slavery. I don't know if you're familiar with AB 31 legislation that is currently taking shape and form right now, but we cannot use flat Blackness in reparations because it's not constitutionally sound. Absolutely. That's one, right? So when we talk about a reparations program, plan, policy, and paychecks, that comes to us.
Absolutely.
Right? But we cannot talk about that global white supremacy is not real all the same, right?
Absolutely.
So we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah, no, it's not the walking. Right. It's not walk and chew. It's like they're two separate issues. So I'm just saying. So for example,
so let's talk about what's happening with Ukraine right now, right?
Yes.
Everybody's big on Ukraine. Matter of fact, the company I work for, the CEO wrote a whole email talking about we got to release resources to Ukraine, what's going on with them is wrong, and so forth. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about all the colonization in Africa. Let's talk about what's happening in Haiti, things of that nature. If we're going to talk about this from a global situation, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the reason why we continue to get pushed as descendants of U.S. chattel slavery, pushed to the bottom caste is what Michelle Alexander aptly identifies.
Absolutely, it's a caste system. Yeah.
Talk about the racial caste system. That's because of a lack of international policy as it relates to immigration.
So a lot of the Black community will see that as maybe connecting two independent issues. So we understand that like this the racial caste system that we are under is a part of global white supremacy. It's like an offset of it.
Right.
The people that run this country came from Britain.
Correct.
You know, so
correct.
And Britain, like I said, the sun never sets on the British Empire.
Correct.
But what a lot of people like to do, and what we saw in the AB 3121 task force,
right,
what we saw is a lot of people were trying to shoehorn black migrants into the conversation. So that's what that's not my reparations. That's not a reparations plan, right?
Okay, yes, and that's not even and if we talk about a black agenda plan, right?
Yes.
Then those are two separate things. Totally separate things.
Absolutely. Because we don't want that flat blackness anymore. No, if we could understand we don't need flat Asianness, then we don't need flat blackness either.
Exactly. No, 100%. Yeah. That's not. And if you were reading that in the website, that's clearly not the interpretation.
Because it was just the however we need a black agenda. I'm like, hold on. No. Like status quo a little bit.
Yeah, no. It's far from status quo. Clearly, we are against crimes.
Yes.
We are against mistreatment against all persons. Yes. Fair enough, right?
Yes.
And we have this saying in the Christian church, ministry begins at home first.
Yes.
Right? For me, home is descendants of U.S. chattel slavery.
Yeah.
That's home for me. Once home is taken care of, then we can take care of everybody else. Yeah. Because the problem is, and historically, what has happened is we've always gotten co-opted when legislation was specifically directed for us
all the time.
Okay, and so that the buck stops here with that.
Yeah, because that's why descendants of American chattel slavery is so important, because when you use terms like Black American, then you could shoehorn other groups, because you could say I'm Black, I'm of the American nationality, I'm a U.S. citizen, but you could be from Puerto Rico or the Dominican Republic. So that's why it's important. That
my focus is, I'm trying to figure out what best articulates when we have to take our bills to the Supreme Court.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Because they ain't going to hear Black American. Yep. They're going to need to hear descendants.
Yes.
They're not going to hear African American. They're not going to hear Black folk. They're going to need to hear descendants. That's what we have to write legislation and policy. This was the gift of me working on the inside of a delegate and seeing how all of this works.
Yes.
Also, it's good to have a relative who's a sitting congressman as well, to basically lay the land out for us.
Yeah, because they're going to do everything in their power to try to get out of it.
They haven't done
it in so many
generations. Right. So, like I said, we're up an uphill climb. That's why I'm glad I'm not the only one running for as a reparationist throughout the country. We have Tamara Shealy Johnson. We have Marcel Dixon. We have Brandon Dean. We got some folk who claiming they're allies and friends. But, the question becomes, I still stick with the ancestor John Henry Clark, who said, you have no friends. Yes. You want a friend, look in the mirror.
Yes.
So I'm looking in the mirror.
I know you throwing shade at too.
Right.
Yeah, I feel you.
Right.
All right. So what's to transition? What's the importance of faith in everything you do? How does faith underpin all your movement as a man, and as a father, and as a husband? Yeah.
No, I was fortunate enough. It's literally faith that got me here. I come from a family of faith. Having been witness to a love story for 48 years, my parents were married for 48 years. That was faith. The fact that they were able to live that out not only was faith, but it was faith that got them the good policy they needed in order for me to stand here right now and sit here right now. Yes. Faith, literally, the gift of faith, as I often share with my patients and people who I serve, is to address what we don't know, not what we do know. And oftentimes we, especially within religious and faith communities, have articulated faith as this bellhop kind of existence. And that's not how faith operates. The psalmist says, as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, not get over it, not get under it, not to get around it, go through it. And if you don't have a faith to get you through something, then I question the strength of your faith. Or once again, if you feel like you cannot do it, that's where faith best exercises itself.
What about confidence? If that valley of the shadow of death, what if I have confidence that I can make it through? Would you say that's different than faith?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
The difference is you have had past valley of shadow of death experiences.
Yes, exactly.
That has given you the confidence to go through that valley of the shadow of death, right? Everybody's faith is not the same.
Yes.
Everybody's understanding of confidence is not the same. And so once again, when you exhaust all what you can and the best that you've done, that's when faith kicks in to address that space of the unknown. Let's bring the science, let's bring the data, let's bring the facts, let's be as best informed as we can. Okay? When I got into this race, this literally is a leap of faith.
Yeah, and that goes back to your role as a chaplain.
Correct.
Because when you're transition into it's all unknown.
Right.
You can't have confidence when you're taking that last breath. You can't have confidence that you're going to go where you're going to go because you have no idea.
That's right.
No data, nothing to
go
off of.
And like I said, we in Resurrection Weekend. That's what Jesus's concern was about. Jesus had, for the first time, in essence, take a leap of faith that he did not know. And that leap of faith is he had to die. And not really necessarily had to die. He saw it coming.
Yes.
Because he was serving his community. Let's be very clear about this. Jesus was serving his community. He was supposed to die, just not the way he was publicly executed. He went through a Roman capital punishment system. Mm-hmm. He was killed by the government and the religious folks that were nationalists in his society.
Yes.
Okay. He was very keenly aware of human misbehavior, not human behavior. And we've often said, well, because I'm natural, then I have this misbehavior. Well, okay, humans are natural, fickle, and curious. Fine. However, he was killed because of human misbehavior, not because of human behavior. And because he was keenly aware of misbehavior, he cried out to God, Lord, let this cup pass before me. I don't want to do this. But he took a leap of faith to trust God enough that God would resurrect him, because the purpose of resurrection is to correct misbehavior, not behavior.
Now, I don't want to turn this into a sermon.
Listen, you started it, Doc.
So do you think that calling it misbehavior might hurt humans in understanding their natural tendencies? Because if like war, chaos, destruction, those are kind of natural offsets of our natural behaviors. Like, for instance, if you have the emotion of anger when it's regulated is good. But when anger is unregulated, that's when it could become problematic. So do you think that calling it misbehavior makes it easy to otherize it, like, oh, they have misbehaviors, but you internally have those same misbehaviors?
Well, it's a point of interpretation. It's a point of subjection. It's a point of philosophical. We're raising really real theological and philosophical questions here.
Yes,
and we should. Because now we're living, we're just not existing.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, we live in a society and a world full of too many human doings and not enough human beings.
Yes.
Fair enough?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And the part in thought, I just want to throw this out there because it went religious, and we know that a lot of the community is kind of shying away from religion. You know, there's a lot,
and understandably so.
Yeah, it's not working for us. What would you say to the community as a reverend? What are your thoughts to the community as we're making this transition?
Well, in part, and especially, I'm assuming when you identify the community, I'm going to highlight the black community.
That's absolutely
and not just the black community, the descendants of U.S. chattel slavery community, yes. Or also what we are now affectionately referring to us as freedmen. We have an ancestry that we might miss if we don't tap into it. The challenge is finding a faith community where you feel God's love best and where you can give God's love best. And part of the problem is, and the challenge is with a lot of my colleagues, is there's many things, but we've been perpetuating this perfection kind of gospel.
Yes.
Rather than a reality one. We have not incorporated science. We have not incorporated the fact that I need to feed my kids. It's always been this piety that has got us in this mess.
But is that possible? Because if you're in a dogmatic thought system, isn't it difficult?
That's an assumption.
Adjust?
That's an assumption.
But let me
finish your point. But that's an assumption. Yeah.
My perspective is it tells you what to think as opposed to how to
Right.
think, and so then you can't adjust
Right.
and adapt if you these stories is all you have to go off of. Like what happened 2,000, 3,000 years ago, these are all the lessons that need to be learned. And you don't need to learn any other lessons when you have all these different factors like the internet and all these other things that are bringing these bad things to your doorstep.
And what I'm hearing from you is a very classical borrowed theology. That's not us. That's not what we were given, especially as people of descendants of enslaved folk. We had spirituality. We were given a theology that was forced upon us that we did not ask for. And so we trying to work it out. That's where it goes back to my earlier statement about the no part of the black community being the last line of defense for us. Because we're still trying to figure it out, because post-traumatic slave syndrome did something very real to us. And I'm here for healing. We're hurt. I'm running because we're hurt. And so I'm here for healing.
Well, we'll end on that point. That's a great point.
Yeah.
I want to thank you so much for coming out. It was a great interview.
Thank you for having me.
Everyone, can you give everyone your URL and how to do it?
Yeah, SummervilleForCongress.com. Go there. We're here to serve the people. Running for California's Congressional District in 42, which consists of Long Beach going all the way up through Downey, Huntington Park, Bell Gardens, things of that nature. Let's get this win and let's go change the world like we're supposed to live in. Thank you.
I'm Jay with 6 zeros. Have a great day.
Yeah. Go team. Yeah.